So hey guys, welcome to Andreas. We are a Porsche 944 specialist here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I want to welcome you to my usually weekly live stream. Sometimes I take the day off, so I wasn't here last week, but I want to welcome you all back. And we're going to try and stay on track again, getting back to these weekly live streams. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday. So what we do is just basically come on live and talk about the Porsche 944 or whatever comes to mind. Sometimes we talk about the differences in the heads over the years, changes that are made. Last time we talked about the differences in crankshafts and doing the timing on the auto tensioner as opposed to the eccentric tensioner, just stuff like that. But anyway, welcome to the show. After I go through some stuff, I usually just read the comments, take your questions. But yeah, hope everybody's having a great Sunday. Glad to be back at it here at the shop today. We're working on a few things. As always, we got a few cars out this week and finally making some good progress on that. Got jammed up for a while, but finally clearing some stuff out. So glad everybody can be here to join us. So I usually wait a minute for people to get in here, and then we'll get started here. Don't really have anything on the schedule today. We just sometimes fly by the seat of our pants and just see where this goes. We get into some conversations in the chat, and then we're usually working on those particular things, and then it gets a little bit more exciting. Sometimes starting off it's a little slow, but hang in there. It gets kind of fun towards the end. That's just the way these live streams go. So of course here we have a lot of different cars. So if you own a naturally aspirated version and you're interested in seeing the turbo engine and what the differences are, you know, we can always do that. If you have a late car and you want to see what an early car looks like, and we have all that stuff here. And just let me know, we'll show you stuff up close and personal. And we can even talk about the car if you're new to 944s and want to know a little bit more about them. Anything pretty much goes around here. You all right?
Yeah. That handbrake keeps getting me in the back trying to
Oh yeah,
out.
you could take that off probably. The handbrake will attack you when you try and get out of the car sometimes.
Yeah.
He was under there trying to change a ignition switch, and it grabbed your shirt.
I still have to get that top little screw isn't coming.
Oh no, that's the fun one.
Yeah.
Happy Fox says hi, B. Well, hi, Happy Fox. Hope you're having a great Sunday. So today, I'll flip you guys around here. Doing a few things. One of them is speakers in the back of this 944 Turbo. Best way to do it is to remove the window here and then pull this trim piece out so you can access the speakers. I don't recommend cutting any of this because it just makes a huge mess and it doesn't want to go back and look right. But these are the speakers that came out of it. More than likely, they do not work anymore. I've seen a lot worse, but yeah, they usually don't work at this point in time. They're very old. And things got a little exciting with the ignition switch in here. We drove this car into the shop. Went to go turn it off, and I'd driven it a few times. Didn't have any problems with it. And I brought it in here, and the lights on the dash stayed on. knew immediately it was going to be an ignition switch issue. At this point in time, guys, just go ahead and replace your ignition switches. You don't need the excitement that we had. I turned the key back on, and sometimes, especially on the early cars, you can just jiggle it and get the lights to go out. Wasn't working on this one, and it started to try and let the smoke out. So luckily I had someone around there and they disconnected the battery, but I was going to unplug the ignition switch, but the ignition switch just completely broke apart. So got a new ignition switch, we tested it, everything's fine, but it did try and burn the car up. It was not fun, and luckily we saved it, and we just got to put a new ignition switch in there now. Jim asks, what kind of smoke machine do you use to check vacuum leaks? So we use two different methods around here. If it's a turbo, we'll do a pressure test. And that just, basically, I'll show you right here. We'll even do this on a naturally aspirated, but it's more commonly used on a turbo. I've got the pieces here, so I thought I had the piece over here. We'll connect it to our air compressor and we'll check for leaks, and then we'll spray everything with soapy water. Here's the one for the naturally aspirated here. This one is, they usually have their sizes on it, I always forget. I think that this one's like a 2.5, and this one's for the turbo here. So rather than doing a smoke test, we'll just do it with a compressor, and you can see with the compressor fittings on here, and you'll hear it leaking. And our compressor's got a little nice valve here, so you can control how much air is going into it. You need to keep this below 5 psi. So if you have a compressor, you can do it that way and just spray soapy water on everything. Works better on a turbo, but it will work on a naturally aspirated as well. I've seen guys buy cheap smokers on Amazon, and they'll do it that way, but that's just how we do that here. Keep it under 5 psi. So you have to have a regulator. If your older compressors, these newer ones have a built-in, but if you got an older one, you'll need to get a regulator for it. Make sure you just put a very low boost into it. Low boost, but very little pressure into it, and check it that way. You don't want to blow things off. It can get pretty bad even above 10 psi, so don't let it get too high. But cheap Amazon one, if you don't have a compressor, will probably work. The problem I have with smoke machines is that sometimes you'll have a vacuum leak at the intake gasket and it just doesn't show up for whatever reason. It'll just slip out, and it just, you can't tell. So you're still going to need soapy water anyway to find that. I have had issues where I just couldn't see the smoke. But when in doubt, replace everything. So we just did a car this week. It was an 89 944 turbo, and it had so many vacuum leaks. So it had a leak at the ISV, it had a J-boot leak. It was just completely torn up, and there was some leak underneath the intake that we just couldn't find. We could hear it, which is something you're not going to get with the vacuum, with a smoke tester. You'll see the smoke, maybe. Some cases you won't. But at least we could hear it because we had the pressure going through it. And at that point, we just replaced everything. We just went in there and replaced the entire vacuum line set. So when in doubt, just change everything. Unfortunately, at this age, everything's probably rotten. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest vacuum leaks that we see a lot of, and it's happened to me a few times, and I've gotten plenty of calls about it, is that the, let me see if I got a naturally aspirated engine around here. Oh, unfortunately right now in the shop, everything is turbocharged. But underneath the intake on a naturally aspirated, there is a bracket that's on the mount. It's on the driver's side mount. That little bracket sometimes gets in the way if you don't sit it down in there just right. You're better off just loosening it, pulling it loose, and making sure it flops down out of the way, because it'll just lift the intake up just enough that the car doesn't want to run. And you put a smoke tester on there, and it'll not show a single leak. You won't see any smoke coming out from there. And you could do it this way, and at least you'll hear the air. But that's a common problem. So yeah, many different ways, and I've even got on my channel like a cheap DIY smoke tester that we made out of a Harbor Freight pressure pump and a cigar. So many different ways to do it. Happy Fox says, how does it run on an intake leak? Are you asking how well does the car run? When that happens, it doesn't run at all. You can't get the car to start at all when it does that. What you can do, so this is, if you have a vacuum leak and the car doesn't start, you can, he said, does it misfire on the cylinders affected? No, it affects all the cylinders. So even if you just have a vacuum leak on cylinder, like the vacuum leaks on gasket number 3 for cylinder 3, it's going to affect all of them. It's just going to pull air straight through there. So in that case, I'm kind of just leaning up against my engine crane here. The car doesn't start. You got a car, it doesn't start, and you can't figure out why it doesn't start. You got tack balance, you got fuel, you got spark, everything, but you can't see a vacuum leak. And in that case, you can look with a bore scope, and you won't see a leak, and smoke will not come out of that for whatever reason. I don't know if it gets just too dispersed or whatever, but the car won't start for whatever reason. What you can do, a little trick to like verify that you have a vacuum leak, is go over and disconnect the DME temp sensor. So you tried to start the car, it won't start. This one's a little bit harder to get to since this is on a 944S, but this one with the blue plug on a naturally aspirated, you can reach in there and just unplug that in most cases, and you unplug that, start the car, be ready to shut it off. But if the car starts up at that point, the idle is wanting to rev the car to the moon, because it's going to be getting too much air. But if the car starts and runs, then, and you'll see the RPM try and go to like 4,000 RPM, turn it off. But if the car runs, that's going to verify that you've got a vacuum leak somewhere. So to recap, you're trying to start your car, you've looked everywhere for a vacuum leak, but you have tack balance, you have fuel and everything, and it still doesn't want to run at all. Unplug the DME temp sensor. That's going to enrich the system enough so that way it'll start with a vacuum leak. The car start, it won't rev, turn it off, but that'll verify that you do have a vacuum leak somewhere, and at that point you're probably going to just go ahead and pull the intake off, and you'll probably find what you I said the number one problem. It's actually the number 2 problem with that happening. The number 1 problem is the people forget to put the that one is the number 1 issue of not seating right, is the number 1 issue of like people just completely giving up on the car. But the number 1 cause of vacuum leaks, and sometimes the cars still run with this disconnected, it's the one that's under the intake. Like I said, I don't have a naturally aspirated in here today. I can go outside and get one, but and show you guys that one. But yeah, make sure that you get all the vacuum leaks, especially that one up underneath the intake. That one's always forgotten almost all the time. That's number one. But when people do remember that one and they can't get their car to start at all, it's usually because that intake's sitting on that. Happy Fox says, I've got a cylinder that misfires, changed the plugs, cables, juggled the injectors, no difference. I think it got compression. It could be, so slight misfire. When are you feeling the misfire? Is it under load or is it during idle? Because a misfire under load and a misfire at idle can be two very different things, or mean two very different things. Jeffrey says, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Jeffrey. Happy Fox says, it's the one up front. Does it get less fuel pressure being the last on the row? No, it shouldn't. The fuel rail should be equally pressurized unless there's something wrong. And usually when a fuel rail gives out, then the fuel pressure regulator gives out, I should say. When it gives out, you're going to have high pressure so much it spikes and it just shuts the car off. So Jim says my 944 was converted from a 2-wire O2 to a 3-wire heated O2 sensor, but the harness was left with 2 separate plugs. So you got an 84, it was converted from the 2-wire O2 to the 3-wire O2 heated sensor, but the harness was left with 2 separate plugs. That's correct. You should have, on the early cars, you have a single one. I may have to go out there and show you guys. I got an 84 here. Let's see. All right, you're gonna make me go outside. Let me grab the keys of that car. All right. So on an 84, from the factory, you're going to have 2 wires on one plug and then a separate wire for your O2 itself. I don't know why this key's so hard to find. Ah, here it is. But someone put a later 3-wire in there and just kind of made it work, I guess. Oh, it's nice outside. It's kind of gloomy earlier. They're expecting, I haven't kept up with the weather that much, but I know it was rainy yesterday, and I know the hurricanes are supposed to be here soon. So I really wasn't expecting it to be a nice day today. But I know tomorrow's supposed to be pretty nasty, so after I get off the live stream today, I've got a lot to do. Okay, so let's take a look. This is an 84. You said yours was a 1284, so that's, let's see what this build is. This one is something. This is a 484. So this one's a little bit earlier than yours, but same thing. 1284. We're out here painting the engine bay, so excuse the mess. I left this here because we put some new seam sealer and stuff down in there. But so all right. So you're gonna have on an early car, you're gonna have this. This is the plug for your heated O2 sensor, and oh boy. All right, somewhere it's supposed to be mounted right here, but you can see someone's putting new AC lines in here, and the where did it go? Oh, I see what they've done here. Okay, so you should have a plug here. It doesn't normally look like this, but someone has just twisted it together here. So this is going to be your plug for the O2. So you can have a 1-wire O2. You don't have to have the heated. It's, you know, I would recommend it, but you can see that this one's just not had a heated O2 in a long time. So the O2 sensor here, they've just, it looks like they've just wrapped this around itself and taped it, and that'll work just fine. You just won't have a heated element on your O2. But there you go. There's normally like a plug here. It's mounted to the firewall, but I might have another early car here. I'd like to show you guys. We just had another 84 leave. 86 turbo, 86 turbo, 86 turbo, 87, 86, 86, 88, 87, 88, and some on the 84. That's odd. So yeah, but yeah, you would normally have 3 plugs on a early car as well. They're just 2 separate connectors. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, there's your heated plug. This one doesn't look like it's had one in a very long time, and someone's just kind of rigged that one up there. But that'll work as well. All right. Now the sensor has a round 3-in-1 plug. It sounds like, yeah, it sounds just like they put the later sensor. Well, yeah, they put a later O2 sensor in the car and made it work with your early. If it works, then I wouldn't worry about it. Everybody rigs these up. The problem with the early cars, and this is why I wish I had an early car here, was that there is a plastic little connector that bolts to the firewall, and that little plastic thing just disintegrates, just turns to dust. And so people remove it, just like you saw in that car, and I don't really pay any mind to it because it's just one of those things, you know, if it didn't come in for it, it's like I'm not really going to pay much attention to it because most of them are broken off there. I thought about developing something to replace that, and someone said, well, I would make that for you, but someone else makes something similar. When I was like, yeah, but mine's going to be a lot easier to use. But anyway. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It just sounds like someone put the later one on there and changed the connectors around. As long as there's nothing soldered, you're in the clear. But if you still have your wires intact, you can always just go and buy. Like, hopefully they didn't cut your car up doing that. If they didn't, then you can just go buy the correct one. And even a 1-wire work. And like I said, that one out there hasn't had a heated one on there for a long time. And a lot of times I get cars in here that are later cars that have the 3 plug, and they just still just put the 1-wire on there. Heated O2 is better though. But hopefully you can get that fixed. So going back to Happy Fox's comment, he's getting a Misfire on 1 cylinder, and he says most notable at idle. On the 83 with the 1 wire, there are 2 wires unused, ready for heated sensors. Yeah. So all right, so if you're saying that the Misfire is most noticeable at idle, then have you said you changed the wires, you changed the spark plug. You swap the injectors around. Okay. How about this? Maybe there's an issue with the wiring to your fuel injector there. Usually if something grounds out, it makes it a very tough thing to diagnose because the car won't start if there's a short in the wire, but maybe the wire is just broken and it's not firing that injector correctly. So maybe there's not a short in it, but maybe there's something just wrong with the wiring. I'd pull back. Before you do that, get a Noid light. They're super cheap at Harbor Freight. Use the Bosch 2 that's in there. And give that a shot. Yeah, ohm everything out, because if there's just a broken wire, maybe that could be it. Maybe as the engine's shaking, it's just connecting and not connecting every night. It's such an odd thing. Jeffrey says, same blank plug at the firewall. My 84 has the red car. As the red car, wondering if I missed something during my recent build. It was blank like that from the factory. So was the other plug unplugged from the factory? No, from the factory, there was a heated O2 sensor on these cars. The thing is that people don't want to pay for the heated O2 sensors, and so they replace it with the single wire. The single wires are often generic, and so they'll just, the plugs don't match up. A lot of times they don't even come with a plug on the generic ones, and so they'll cut the plug off the car and just twist it together and then tape it up. To buy the O2 sensor with the correct plug often costs twice as much, and then to get the heated O2 sensor for the cars can cost sometimes 3 times as much. So because you gotta buy the ones that come with the heating element, and they come with the additional wires and the plug and the correct plug and all that stuff. So no, it's just a lot of times people just getting the cheapest O2 sensor, so you're not missing anything. Happy Fox says, voltage drops come and go, hard to pinpoint when it's not present. So the voltage drops, are you saying coming from the alternator, or are you saying the voltage drops at the injectors? If that's the case, then you've got, I think, terminal 87 on the DME relay that sources power to all that stuff. Then maybe you got, so that sends power from 30 to your idle or AAV, your auxiliary air valve, and then you're going to have power going to the injectors. Make sure that if you're seeing voltage drops, then it could be something shorting out somewhere or a broken wire. But all the injectors, including the AAV, are on the same wire, and so you would be seeing voltage drops on all the injectors. And then if you're just having the misfire on one, that means you got a short in that particular wire, more than likely. What arrives inside always drops with load. Okay. So you're saying while you're driving, you're seeing the voltage gauge drop down under load, and then it goes back up? Like how much? Because the battery should be, it shouldn't go below 12 volts if your battery's good. You got an early car at that, so I mean the difference between the real battery voltage and the meter inside. So if you have the car running, you should have like 13.9 volts at the battery. But your volt gauge inside is showing 10 volts or something around in there. And you're seeing it drop. Sometimes it's really hard to get the correct context of comments. But yeah, so Cristiano says, where are you from? We are here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Where are you guys from? Looks like we got some pretty nice weather today. It's cloudy. It was really cloudy earlier, but it looks like it's clearing up. So looking forward to that. After the live stream ends, I've got a lot of stuff to do outside, so that's going to make it a little bit easier. Subliminal says, did you have to work at any cars at 944 Fest this year? No, I did not. Yeah, very fortunate this year. Everything went pretty well as far as that was concerned. I try to avoid it if possible, but it happens. But no, I didn't have to work on anything this year. I tried my best to live stream and just kind of share the event with you guys. Another Jim asks, says, I was told that late Type 1 cars have some parts from the Type 2. Do you know what parts, or does it differ from car to car? Yeah, I mean, Porsche changed a lot year to year, so you can have an 85 2, which is a late dash, and then you can have an 87, and they'll have completely different oil coolers and different tensioners, the way of tightening the belts, different oil pumps, different balance shafts, different balance shaft covers. So a lot of the changes were done to accommodate for the turbo, so they didn't have to build two cars. They didn't have to build a completely different car for the turbo, if that makes any sense. So all the engine blocks will have the oil feed for the turbo, even if it's not a turbo type deal. So when they swapped everything over, a lot of this stuff is just cheaper to make if you just have to make one part. But asking in particular what came over from the early car to the late car, I mean, they were constantly evolving. So you can have an 85 and a half and 86 are essentially the same. But when you get into like the 87 engine, they changed balance shafts again, changed the housings again. So even between the 944.2, you've got a bunch of different parts that just vary year to year. So it goes the same. I've seen European 82 models that have completely different oil pans than the 83, 84 models that we got here in the States. So, I mean, it's just year to year, pretty much everything year to year. But bumper stayed the same for naturally aspirated. And the body pretty much stayed the same. But mirrors and stuff, so that's an interesting thing too, is like the 86 cars are the later cars, but they still have the early basis for the mirrors, but they got the late mirrors. So up until 85.1, you had a early mirror, which is the top part here, and you had a early base, which was more rectangular. 85 and a halfs and 86s, they got the later mirror that you have to like actually turn the little rotary dial to pop out, but they still had the early base. And then when you get to 87, you had a late mirror with a late base, and base was more triangular shaped by then. So there you go. Things change from year to year. So even among like the later cars, there are things that just are completely different year to year. But there are some things that carried over from the early car, but most of it was external, I would say. Most of it. Happy Fox says, I got close to 14 volts inside until the fans come on. It's like the harness bleeds more under high current. Oh, absolutely. Okay, I see what you're saying. So at the battery, you're showing 14 volts. but inside the car, when like the fans come on, the gauge inside goes down. That's probably more of a ground issue. Not to mention that the wiring that runs through the voltmeter is not exactly connected directly to the battery itself, so it goes through the fuse box and everything else. So over time, I'm just guessing that, you know, corrosion and just being very small wires to begin with, it's probably just not going to read right. But maybe something you want to figure out, like maybe go to the injectors and see if like the voltage drops happening at the injectors when the fans are coming on. It could be, you know, maybe a ground issue on the block, because all that stuff is pretty much grounded through the block, the harness and everything. Not necessarily the gauges themselves. I think they're grounded, especially on an 84. They're going to be grounded up underneath where the fuse block is. But you never know. You might be getting a voltage drop somewhere. And Happy Fox says, I understand why you do the wires directly to the headlight swap. Yeah. So he's talking about why we run the wires directly from the alternator. Yep, that's exactly it. The vacuum switch behind the air filter on the NA cars, what does that do when it is on? So, all right. You have an auxiliary air valve on the early cars. And what that is it's basically an on-off switch. It doesn't really have much adjustment in it at all. It's just on and off. That's why you only have like 2 wires on it. So, and it's not a rather sophisticated system, but that's what Bosch put on the cars. Anyway, to keep the idle stable, so to speak, you know, it wants to keep the idle at, you know, 950 RPM, somewhere around in there. That opens and closes depending on like how hot or cold the engine is, to try and stabilize the air. But it's, again, not a very advanced system. So when you go to kick on the AC, what happens? It puts a load on the engine, and you have a supplementary air valve on the air box. You'll see it back there. Again, I'll have an early car here. I might go out there and see if I can show you on that one. I already locked it up though. But at the back of the air box on the early cars, and there's still a remnant there, so he was asking me about what things stayed the same. Even on the later cars, the air boxes still have the remnants of that place where the supplementary air valve went on the air boxes. So even if you get an 87 944, you still have that bracket there, and people go, well, what was that for? Well, that was for the early car supplementary air valve. So when you turn the AC on, it opens that valve to give it more air than the AAV can, and brings the idle back up. So there you go. That's basically it. The AAV is just a very basic design, and it really wasn't designed with air conditioning in mind. So for cars that got air conditioning, they had to have the supplementary air valve. And later cars got the idle stabilizer valve, which is a little bit more advanced, and that is actually like, it can open up in different ways. So like when you turn the AC on, it knows, and then it can increase the idle even more, and when you turn it off, it can decrease the idle appropriately. So the ISV was kind of a blend of the AAV and the supplementary air valve being brought together into one unit. It's a little bit more advanced. Basically, you see these on cars today. It's the same thing you see on a car today, but they'll put them in the throttle body, and it just kind of either goes in or out like that on a modern car. And I say modern car, yeah, I probably haven't worked on a car. I own newer cars, but the last time I worked on a car that had this is probably like a mid 2000s. But yeah, the ISV on those just kind of screw out and screw back in, and like a plunger to replace. You know, we have a screw on ours, but yeah, I'd be a pretty interesting mod to take this idle screw out of the throttle body there, drill it out, and modify it. Maybe put a modern one in there, and you could do away with all that mess up underneath there. But yeah, that's what your supplementary air valve is for. It's just to, yep, just comes on when the AC's on. Jim asked, what issues would you run into putting a late turbo block in an early 944? Just running the block? Or are you going to try and... So, none at all. Everything bolts in. So, the pistons and all that stuff are going to fit. Your block's going to fit. The issues that you'll have is that it goes down a little bit of a rabbit hole to some degree. So what are you trying to do with it? Are you just taking a block because let's say your 83 block has got an alert, someone's outside. So let's say that your 83 block's blown, block's no good, but you want to use your crank, your rods, your pistons, your oil pan, and your pickup tube, all that stuff, and you're just going to swap it over into the new block. Well, you're not going to have any issue with that as long as you got the right tolerance group for a piston. So we're going to assume that the pistons and all that are all group 1, and you just want to swap it all over. No problem, works perfect. But the rabbit hole begins when you're like, oh, but the pickup tube's broke, I want to put the late pickup tube in, and now you got to swap the later oil pan in there because pickup tubes changed over the years. Some are a little bit longer. The volume of oil changed, so some of the oil pans are bigger, and so you have to make sure that you match everything together and stuff like that. But otherwise, no, you can just go ahead and do that. For the most part, all the same. So I think I got, let's see here, I think, I'll show you guys this. Maybe one day I'll do a quick video on see what's really going on here. That's the engine. I thought it was. Oh, that engine's over there. Okay. I got about 5 engines here. I was going to recover one and see what we had. Put them side by side here. I don't make it happen. Maybe. Fox asked, how many turns is the idle screw? From in, as a rule of thumb, from like 2.5. Just as a good rule of thumb, it's about 2.5. But I will tell you, it doesn't always work that way, but yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. Top Trash Man says, any tips for taking the balance shaft mount, the lower balance shaft out while it's in the car? Broke the mounting ear for the power steering pump. Is it possible to use an 86 balance shaft cover on the 89? I'm guessing you're talking about the balance shaft cap. That's what I call it. Just the front part of it, right? You broke the mounting ear for the the power steering pump. So you're just having to replace this part here. I got 50 of them laying around here because we have to be clear on that, because the housing is different than this, but I think I know what you're talking about. It's the front part. This part here we go. I'm guessing you broke this part, specifically this. So if you're just talking about this, yes. You just, now in this case, you're gonna have to take your belts off. So you have to remove your accessory belts. You got to remove the balance shaft belt, timing belt, remove the cover. And then once you do that, on an 86, you should just have one bolt in the back of it. And then you're going to have 3 bolts in the front. You just pull that out, put the new one in, and you got to retime everything and go that. It's not the end of the world. It's not fun, but it's not the end of the world. But yes, an 86, 89 cover will go on 86, no problem. Just make sure. Let's see. See, this one here has 2 bolts there. And if you look at one of the other ones that I have, nothing's ever close by when I need it. Some of them have 1 bolt, some of them have 2 bolts. And some 1 bolts don't fit other 1 bolts. But I believe those 2 bolts were only for the 84 model year, so not something you really have to worry about. But yeah, should work just fine. I believe after 86, they're all pretty much the same ones. Let's see if I have one in here. I'll have 15 of them, and as soon as I go live, I don't know where any of this stuff went. But yeah, just watch out for that. But it should work just fine. Okay, Top Trashman says yes. So yeah, you'll just pull the accessory belts off, pull the balance shaft, pull the covers off the housings, and then pull the belts off. You have to retime everything, but it's not the end of the world. It's about it turned into a 2-day job, but it's not the end of the world. It's not too bad to change that. But it should work perfectly. Before you go to mount it up, just make sure that, you know, when you flip them over and you look at the back side of them, that they have the single bolt. You'll want the same part number, essentially. I guess you could just look at the part number. So this one here is 944101 1420R, and this one will only work on an 84. Well, earlier ones too. Well, 83s, I gotta know. Some of those didn't have power steering at all, so their bracket looks nothing like this. So 84, they came out and they had this 2-bolt bracket, and just because it came off an 89 doesn't mean that someone ain't swapped some stuff around. That happens a lot. So yeah, just pull it off and verify that they're the same. Another Jim said, sorry I'm calling you the other Jim. There was a Jim, this is Jim V. How about I do that? We had a Jim and a Jim M and another Jim, and we got a Jim V. So I'll say Jim V. Here it says Top Trash Man. My car had the same. When I bought it, I just converted to manual steering. Jim V also says, as putting in a manual rack and not converting to old rack. Awesome. Yeah, it's the way to go. Well, if you need to drive without power steering for a while, I've seen broken steering wheels from the depowered rack stuff. So if you have the 4-spoke, the H steering wheel, the sideways H steering wheel, what do you call those things? Around the shop, we just go, that steering wheel, you know. But yeah, if you have like the 4-spoke steering wheel, those can handle pressure a little bit better than a 3-spoke steering wheel. So if you have a 3-spoke steering wheel, keep in mind they weren't meant for a manual rack. And I'm not telling you guys, I'm just saying that for the depowered rack especially. It is rough on a steering wheel. Do you have any luck with it?
I got the bottom one tight. The top one's in there. I just can't. It keeps slipping out. And
Is it because the screwdriver's too thick?
I think so. I just can't get the right angle on
Can't
it.
get it right. I'm gonna see if we can. I have to go to the store later. Maybe I'll get a screwdriver that works a little bit better.
Yeah, like a really thin.
Yeah,
or
like
a
you need
long
a.
one.
Oh, you need a thin one. Oh, I've got that.
Or like just shorter than the stubby one.
Oh, it's even. You want? Yeah, I was thinking about getting a stubby one that was a little bit thinner. But I do have a long one that is really like exactly the same size as that screw.
Yeah, I've got a relatively thin one here, but I think it needs to be a little bit longer. Yeah, this is what I was using.
Oh yeah, I've got a real well. Usually it's over there with the rest of the screwdrivers.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You know exactly. Oh, what? Here it is. This it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let me put this one back over here. We try and keep our screwdrivers magnetized to the fridge over here, but they walk off. It happens. Jeffrey says, in my haste to make it to 944 Fest, I managed to not reconnect the wires on my brake fluid reservoir. Now I can't find where they buried the wires. Where do they originate from? Yeah, let's see. This harness here, this is a late car. You got an early car, but it's about the same idea. They come from over this direction. I might just go out. We'll go back out to that 84. That one's going to be the star of the show today, I think. But yeah, I believe in the 84s. It's about the same thing. Locked it all up again. Well, that ain't right. Should be just about the same here. Oh, it's a little different. Okay, that's why we do this. Let's see. On this car, it comes out of the same harness. The harness just happens to drop way down in there on the early cars. So, let's see. I can't even get my hand in there. Let's go around that way. Okay. So yeah, it's pretty much coming out of the same harness, but rather than that harness coming around this way, it just, yeah, just drops straight down beside the master cylinder there for the clutch. Then turn it around, comes up. No, hopefully that helps. You're looking for those connectors there. But yeah, we got this car pretty much ready to rock and roll now. We are doing body work on it right now. So I moved it outside so it would get dusty. But, yeah, you can look how many layers. So this is bent, so we gotta prime this, but that's the primer from the factory. So we got one layer, that's the factory paint. So this is a respray on top of that. We got 1, 2, and some primer in there too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, about four resprays on this car. And I'll tell you what was the worst was that Now check this out. Whoever painted it didn't even pull off the chip guards here. Like, what the heck? So yeah, we spent a couple of hours this week. We got to chip this off before we can get to the chip guards and get the chip guards off, and then we can finally that's fine. So yeah, if you're repainting the car, please remove the chip guards. It'd help. Just tip of the day. Top Trash Man asks, and why would the power steering pump belt tensioning screws keep shearing off? I've had 2 used ones break on me in 3 weeks. And he's done a very nice diagram of how it looks. It looks like. That's a very good question. So it's the screw, like the things that actually screw into the turnbuckle shearing, or is it the bolts that are actually mounting it to the car in that? Did that work?
Nearly. I think if we get one that has a thinner handle, it will work. It's getting caught on the bracket that's holding the what's it called, steering shaft in.
Okay. Yeah.
Like a slightly thinner one.
I think I'll go buy one later today.
Yeah. Okay.
It's time for some new screwdrivers. I'll keep. Wait a minute. You know what? We might have something. Maybe. I got an unopened pack of screwdrivers here. So it needs to be a thinner handle, right?
Yeah.
I do not have that. I do have. No. I don't think that'll work, but I'll let you look at it. That one there.
Yeah.
I think the handle's too big.
Yeah. It
Okay.
just has to be super thin.
Okay.
It's so annoying how they put it up there. It's made it impossible to get.
And the last thing you want to do is like pull the steering wheel and all the stuff. I think you got to pull a lot of stuff to get in there too. So if that's breaking, that is pretty interesting. I've never seen one break, but oh yeah, the threaded part is where it broke. Does the power steering pump turn easily? So if you just take it without the belt on there and you try and turn it, does it turn fairly easily? If the mount is, I don't know, maybe something's not aligned correctly, but I wouldn't think it would snap. So it's a very good question. Now you've probably jinxed me, and I'm gonna see 5 of these next week, and then I'll be able to tell you. But as for now, I don't think I've ever seen that one. Hopefully it's just an issue where something's out of alignment, or the power steering pump is seized, but even then that's a kind of a weird one. But yeah, just let me know how that one turns out once you get that new part on there and get everything lined up. It could just be something that, you know, if you said that you broke the mount for it, maybe the power steering pump's just jerking back and forth and just broke that out. I've never seen it, and I wouldn't even think that'd cause that, but you just never know. So Jeffrey asks, how do you treat raw galvanized metal when prepping for paint? So first of all, we try and do everything we can to preserve the galvanizing on the paint, and you'll notice that it rained and it looks like exposed metal there, but it is not rusted. So the galvanizing is still, for the most part, on there. You have to use a special, anytime you do any body filler or you do anything on galvanized paint, you have to have stuff that's specifically formulated for it. So I have had so many people through the years, and I'm kind of glad you asked this question. So we get this a lot, and I remember being back on forums way back in the day, and we get so many cars in, and I'm going to show you this here. So this car has 5 layers of paint on it, and you can see right here there's rust. So what they used to do back in the day, and this is not necessarily one of the cars they did it in, but body shops, what they'd do was they're always told to go down to the metal when they could possibly do it. But on Porsches and stuff that were galvanized, no other cars were back then. This was a relatively new thing back then. They would spray the car with the same old oil-based paints and primers that they were using for decades, because like all the cars were single stage and everything was oil-based. They'd put that alkyd paint on there, and it would react with the galvanizing, and it would flake off. And so about a year later, your entire car was flaking off, and it would look, let's go turn that car, it would look like this over here. So this is people not following directions on the cans causes stuff like this. So there you go. This is what it looks like when you don't follow the directions on a paint can. And back then they didn't know any better. So these body shops, they'd never seen a Porsche, they'd never seen galvanized metals back in the 80s. Didn't know anything of it. They'd spray it on there, the paint would flake off like that. Today, that's a reading issue. But back then, that was just, people didn't know any better. So properly used galvanized stuff is that you need to have the right stuff. So if you're using Bondo and you're wanting to use it against galvanized steel, you have to use Bondo Gold. That is the only stuff that is rated for galvanizing, or else it's going to fall off. You ever heard, oh, my Bondo chipped out? Yeah, because you didn't use the right stuff. You used the wrong stuff, you didn't read the directions, and that's how you ended up like this. So primer's the same thing. If you use an oil-based primer on this, it's going to flake off just like I showed you on that car over there. So they were guys, they were like, oh, we have to grind it all off. We have to grind the galvanizing off to be able to paint this car. And then you end up with cars that just rust out. And we see this all the time. So the car that just left, we were doing body work on, it was so rusted out, car was in an accident, they grinded sometime back in the 90s, they just grinded all that stuff off so that way they could use like whatever they wanted to on there. And eventually the Bondo just rotted out, it chipped off, and you could just see the grind marks in there, and it was just pure rust. So we have to replace those doors when they do that. So that's why we try and preserve the galvanizing and stuff. But anything that is not oil-based paint, so your sandable primers, they're going to be oil-based. You're going to have anything that's gray, you can just go ahead and chalk that up to being oil-based or alkyd paint, and it will say, I'll show you a can in here, do not use them on galvanized paint. So there are special primers that we use. Any acid etch primers will work on galvanized. So if you just want to go to a store and you just want a primer that's going to work, use an acid based, they'll say acid etch. It's not acid based, it's just an acid etch. But if you read this can here, oh, come on. But anyway, these cans will say do not use on galvanized metals. But you just want a quick fix, use some acid etch. But there are plenty of stuff you can use. Like I said, there was oil-based paints, there's water-based paints. You can probably use those. The acid etch paints will work. The plastic paints, they're I call them plastic paints, but they're oh, I can't think of them right now. But yeah, anything acrylic, Sometimes acrylic will work. I think acid edge paints are acrylic based. Um, but there's one particular, I can't remember. I painted a car in it years ago, and they are like the best paints, but they'll kill you. I can't remember what it's called now. It's just not coming to mind. But I painted several in that primer. I'm really mad at myself. I can't think of it. But it was a 2K. I'm gonna have to look it up now. It's always been on my mind, but I can't think of it right now. But those primers are awesome. You put them on there, and in 2,000 years, that car will still be sitting there, and you'll just go up and touch it, and it'll just be a shell of that plastic. But you paint that, and you can paint the. I wish I had another phone on me. I could probably get my. But anyway, there are paints out there that are just amazing nowadays that you don't have to worry about that on. But if you are using an alkyd-based paint, or even some of these older acrylics, you're gonna have a bad time. So yeah, back then people didn't know better. They just grind the galvanizing off and put the alkyd stuff on there because that's what every car used. And they would actually get frustrated, and they'd tell you, you can't paint galvanized steel. But today, if you can't paint galvanized steel, that's an issue with the painter, and that's a skill issue. That's not a you can't do it skill. That's you didn't read the label type stuff. But anyway, guys, I kind of rambled on about that. I really wish I want to say it starts with a V, but I really can't think of it right now. But that stuff is dangerous. We had to paint that in a fresh air booth, because even if you wore a respirator in there, that stuff would kill you. But it's an amazing paint. But anyway, guys, maybe I'll remember it the second I get off the live stream. But all right, guys, haven't seen any more questions. So DuPont Imron. No, it was DuPont. It was a DuPont paint, but many people do make it. I want to say it starts with. Years ago, we did a lot more painting than what we do now, so I don't do the painting in the house anymore, which I want to do again, so I don't remember all the paints that we used to use. No, it was, it's the type of paint, not just the brand. But it was a DuPont. I can't even remember the name brand anymore. Getting old, man, getting old. That was 2010. That's been 15 years ago now since I painted that. And I thought I would never forget the name of that paint because I was so happy with it. But you could do a single stage in that and buff it out, and it was just gorgeous, and it was thick, and the sun could come down out of the sky and not harm it. So it's a pretty awesome paint. But yeah, I'll think about it. I'll tell you guys next week when I look it up. I've still got pictures of the paint can somewhere. Or I'll put it on my, look on my Facebook group. I'll dig up a picture of it. We did do some acrylics back then too, but you have to use the acid etch and the 2K primer before you can do that. So these cars are painted in acrylic, so there's nothing that fancy about them, but the primer that you put between the galvanized steel and that is the thing. But what I did was I used the same type of stuff, and that issue over there is probably more of they use like a DuPont brand primer that was probably oil based, and it needs to breathe, and then they put probably like some 2K shot over top of it. And oil based paints, they never dry, they're just always breathing. So trying to paint over some of that stuff, it'll cause some issues. I guess by now most of them breathed out, but yeah, I won't go down the rabbit hole anymore. But Anyway, guys, I'm probably boring you to death, but if you are interested in that paint, I'll put a picture of the paint that I used over there, and I'll remember what it is. Wasn't lacquer, was a V. Anyway, all right, guys. Thank you all for coming out, and I'll put some of that stuff over there on my Facebook. Be sure to follow the main page. I know a lot of you guys are in the group, but if you don't follow the main page, I try and post on both, but sometimes you miss some stuff that I don't post over there on the main page, which is just the Andreas main page. I don't know what else to call it. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. Got a lot to do. Hope you guys enjoyed the live stream, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you guys for joining me. See you then.